Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Keeping with the family theme, I'm now joined with my cousin Debbie in her house in DeBary, Florida. Debbie, thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here.
So, again, part of this journey for me is kind of, keeping my mother's legacy alive of connecting with family. And, it's kind of funny. We spent a lot of time with Patty and Carol. Did a podcast with Patty when we were down at Carol's house. I'll do one with Carol. But I really wanted to kind of talk a little bit about other people's perspective on my mother, as well as just our family in general. And you've kind of been one who has really gone to extended efforts to try to piece together our family tree. So,
did I know at the time it was going to be the challenge that it was? No, but yeah, I did. 3-4 years ago now.
Yeah.
Just starting with Pap, our grandfather, trying to figure out where we all came from, and my daughter Jessica, who lives in Jersey, her son is 9 years old. And he is very, very interested in his history, who his people are. And that's what triggered it. And it just started a whirlwind of just amazing results. We found cousins we didn't know we had, people that had been looking for their roots and their history, like Uncle Jim's daughter Pam. He died when she was young. She didn't know anything about her family on his side at all. And we found her, and it's amazing to see how much she's like us.
Yeah.
And then there's some other family. I mean, it's just been, and I'm not even done yet. I mean, we had to stop because it takes over. Our tree is so big. Yeah, and but it's just so neat to hear the stories and to hear the tales that people tell. And we lost a lot of people at young ages, so to hear other perspectives of what it was like growing up, it's just way cool.
Yeah.
Way cool.
Yeah. So, we've had a lot of conversations over the past couple of days that we've been able to spend some time here together. And, one of the things that we've talked about is really how us as adult children now, look at our parents and, really understand that they had this, the deck stacked against them in a lot of ways. And all of them, really were quite successful in their own ways. I mean, your dad was a, major in the Air Force, something that, I told you yesterday, my mom was so proud of. I mean, she always, whenever talking about her brother Paul, would point out, and he didn't go to officer school. He enlisted.
He enlisted at 17. He had to get permission. He had to get permission to enlist at 17. And I was telling you earlier today, going to school for him was very difficult because they moved around so much. He went to so many different schools that he finally had to, say, he went to the school district and said, look, I need to graduate so that I can continue on with my life. And they let him stay in one school, which was out of his district, and he traveled for an hour and a half back and forth just so that he could graduate and be able to go into the service. And just things like that, all four of them did. Just, the things that happened, they didn't let it stop them. They all said, this is not what's going to define me, I'm going to rise above, and they did.
Yeah, I think resilience was a pretty common factor.
Absolutely.
For sure.
That, and I think, and we were talking about this today earlier too, they all kept each other going. I remember both, I think hearing, I know Dad was in reform school at one time. I think your mom was in trouble at one time, and they both lifted each other out of it. This isn't what you want to do with your life. This is what, don't let this be. And that's what they all did with each other.
Yeah.
Over the years and through the good and the bad and the indifferent, they were all there for each other. And
and it's
pretty
funny,
amazing.
We talked as well about how growing up geographically, we were never that close. I mean, you guys were traveling all over the world.
All over the country, all over the world, yes.
With your dad being in the service, but it always seemed like when there was an event, I just remember being around, my cousins and everything. And
somehow, some way, we all always got together, and on a regular basis. I mean, it wasn't even, every few years. It was all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things at all ages that we remember coming together, and it wasn't just for a family like death or a wedding or, they made it a point to make sure that we all knew each other.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty amazing feat, because
Yeah.
we were all over the place.
So we were talking today. I mean, I remember going out to when you guys were in Ohio and
Kings Island.
going to Kings Island. But another thing I remember about that trip is going to one of your swim meets. You and Patty and Carol.
We all of us.
Right?
Paul dove, Tink dove,
Yep.
and then the other four of us all swam.
Yeah. So I remember.
And Mom and Dad were
specifically going
timekeepers,
to-
and that was the big thing when we were in Oxford, Ohio.
Yeah, and it's funny, just some of the things that stick with me, because I was young, I was really young when we made those trips.
Yeah.
And there's little, fragments of what I remember.
I remember Mom and Dad being so happy that we were in Ohio because it was so close to Pennsylvania.
Right.
All the other places we had been at that point were far,
Yeah.
just farther away. And so that one we did get to see, I think, pretty much everybody, because we were, and think about it, it's not that close really, but it was closer than we had ever
Right.
been.
Right.
So yeah.
Probably still a good 6 hours.
Oh, yeah.
probably, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's funny, and I think when my mom first started her trip, her journey, it was so important to her to reconnect with family and just keep in touch. I mean, what are some of the things you remember when you first, heard about your Aunt Loretta going out and doing this?
I don't know when I heard about it. I don't know if I even did hear about it. What I do remember, and I'm not even sure of the year, maybe, I would say maybe 82-ish. We were in Houston, Texas. Patty and I lived in Missouri City, Texas. It was just outside of Houston. And there was some kind of festival, something or another, in Galveston. And Patty and I were there, and we were young and, partying, whatever. And up walks your mother. And I'm like, Patty, is that Aunt Loretta? And she's like, it is. And she showed up in Missouri City, Galveston, Texas. And that was when I knew your mother was traveling. And let me tell you something. She spent 3 days with us down on the beach. We slept in the car. We partied. And she was right there with us the whole time. We didn't do anything, we weren't bad kids. We didn't do anything illegal. It was just, partying on the beach. But here we are, teenagers, and your mom was right out there with us.
Yeah.
And that was when it was like, wow, she's pretty cool, because before then we were young, and she had to be a mom and an aunt, and she was cool, but not that cool.
Right.
So yeah, that was when I knew that was when I found out. That was when I saw the car where she had the seat taken out and the bed, da 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 da.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was when I found out your mother was
Yeah.
traveling.
You guys had no idea she was going to be.
I
coming to
didn't,
town.
or if I did, it didn't register. Your kid at that time.
She loved surprising people.
Oh,
That was her.
Literally,
big deal.
that's the part I remember. Patty, is that Aunt Loretta? And it was like, no. And then,
What would she be
as
doing
soon
in
as she talked,
Galveston?
as soon as she opened her mouth, it's like, that is Aunt Loretta. And yeah, because I had met a guy on a motorcycle, and I was hanging out with him, and Patty had her. That was when she was with John long-haired
Powers.
hippie guy.
I
Yeah.
remember him.
And they were. I think they were even playing in a band down on. It was just back then. That's what you did, and I'm telling you, she was just right there alongside of us. I got on the bike with the guy, and we headed out to get something to eat or something. She's like, all right, I'll be here when you get back. It was just, yeah. And she stayed for a couple days.
Yeah.
And we were down at the beach the whole time. It was just, I think we finally called it quits, and it was like, all right, let's all go take a shower and, regroup. But yeah, that was your mother. And that's when I found out she was traveling. And it was like, oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. And it was just cool that we could do that,
Yeah.
because we saw a whole different side of her at that point. She wasn't Aunt Loretta,
Right.
she was Loretta.
Yeah. Yeah. It's. I love hearing those stories. I was part of some of those stories, but yeah. She did absolutely love surprising people.
Yes.
And showing up on their doorstep and when I did the podcast with Patty, I told the story about when we showed up on Tink's doorstep in Quantico, at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning. So yeah, and I think for us, certainly, connecting with you guys was part of, one of our goals of this journey. I don't know that we thought we'd connect as much as we have so early on with some of the cousins. It just worked out that you moved back here from Germany.
Right.
Patty and Carol are both hour and 2 hours away from you here. We're staying with Aunt Sally over in Melbourne, so it kind of all worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
But one of the things I remember about your dad is just like Uncle Paul was just this like larger than life individual for me, because again I was, now at our age doesn't seem that much different.
But you were
But when
you
I'm
were
9
younger.
and you're 14,
Yeah,
it's
I don't even.
big difference.
Yeah, you were just. That's Danny.
Yeah,
That's Danny. That's
yeah.
it.
So like he was just again this just larger than life, individual for me. So, being the daughter of the major, how does that differ from being the nephew of the major?
That's a tough one. My dad was on a pedestal for me for a very long time. And I saw him the same way you guys did. But he was human. And there were things that I found out in later years that kind of brought him back to the human level. But I can say he was always there for everybody. He would give you the shirt off his back, even if he didn't like you, and my husband can vouch for that. Even if he didn't like you, he would still go to bat for you. So, it's hard because he was my dad, and I lived with him 24/7, and, I had 2 older brothers, and I was never allowed to do anything because they were boys and I was a girl, and all of that stuff. But I do know that of all the people that I've talked to in my life that worked with him, that knew him, family and otherwise, everyone has said that. He was just one of those people that truly cared about people.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you stories about when we were kids, we always had a dog. Never ever did we go anywhere and purchase a dog, get a dog from a pound, but we always had a dog. And it was because, somebody was getting stationed overseas and, hey, Paul, can you watch this dog for us for a while? And, then we'd get that one. And it just over the years, we always had a dog and it was never our dog.
Yeah.
And that was just, that's the best way to explain it. He was just, oh yeah, sure. My mother would be like, not another one, And it just, I remember both of my parents just always being very active in our lives, like the swim meets that you're talking about. They were their timekeepers. All of us had sports, basketball, volleyball, football, gymnastics, you name it. They were there for it. Dad was remote in a couple of places and TDY at times, but he was always there for us. So, yeah, it was larger than life.
Yeah.
We didn't appreciate it when we were kids.
Right.
But he was a good egg.
And that, that generation, I think there was always a little bit more weight put on the oldest. And I think he carried that weight well. Because I remember when our cousin Jerry passed away, when Donnie and I showed up at the funeral, the first one there to greet us was your dad. To really kind of, again, be that rock, to comfort us and again, just live up to that eldest son responsibility that
and
he
took
on.
it very seriously. He took it very seriously.
Yeah.
And not just as a sibling, but as the uncle and as the, just as a part of everyone's family.
Yeah.
I mean, there's stories I can tell you about things that he did for different nieces and nephews, and opportunities that they might not have had he not been able to, because he was so worldwide and could do things and had connections for things, opportunities they wouldn't have had, and yet he did it without thinking.
Right.
It was just, hey, wait a minute, I know somebody that can, and he just did it.
Yeah. And did it expecting nothing in return.
Oh no, never.
And that was something that my mom talked about a lot. Obviously, in her older years, she volunteered a lot. She did stuff for the Salvation Army. She went up to 9/11, helped with hurricane relief efforts. And I do remember, one time having a conversation with her about, why did she do it so much? And she just responded and said, there have been a lot of people who have helped me throughout my life. So as far as I'm concerned, it's just payback time.
Right. Pay it forward.
It's just me doing what I'm supposed to do. Another friend of mine says that talks about a quote from Muhammad Ali where it says, service to others is our rent for being here on earth. And that was her way of paying her rent. And it's funny because when you look at all of her siblings, they
do that.
They inherited that.
Yes.
And
our whole generation, all of us at our level. And I'd like to think that some of the next generation is getting there. They're still a bit young yet, and they're still at that stage where they're struggling to find out who they are.
Right.
But yes, it's very interesting that all of us at that next generation past our mom and dad, we feel the same way. It's like, it's not all about us. It's about what we can do. And it's not about what you get back. I don't care. It's a whole different outlook on life. And I think they gave that to us.
Yeah.
I think they gave that to us.
They definitely did. Because, again, the more I think about it, a lot of times I just, was somewhat tunnel vision of, it was my mom's way of doing things. But then as you take a step back and you look around, it wasn't just her, it was Uncle Paul.
It was the way, it's a blanket.
Yep.
It's a blanket.
Yep.
And how far we let it go it's all up to us. It may have started with them, I guess. I don't know. We don't know a whole lot at this point. I'm still digging into Pap and that generation. But it's a blanket effect. And our, as you said, our family we're finding people we didn't even know we had. Right. Yet every new person that I've met that's connected is the same. And it's I don't know, that's not something that just happens. Right. I think that's all a part of who we are.
Yeah, it's definitely in the DNA. I think, without a doubt.
I agree. Because like Pam, I mean, she's one of us. And if I saw her on the street and, I'd be like, what, do I know you? And she's not the only one. That's just the one that pops into my head because she's so verbal and but yeah, it's kind of cool. I mean, we didn't appreciate it, I think, when we were younger.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we were too busy being kids. But as we all started to grow up, it was like, wow, makes sense. Yeah. Maybe we should try that.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. And when you talk about Pam, I mean, she was really young when Uncle Jim passed away.
I think she was 9.
Yeah, so.
And hadn't seen him or heard from him in a few years.
Right.
Back in that day, it was kind of a different. So she, had a few family pictures, and her mom hadn't really been in touch with him. They didn't have like child support and all that stuff back in that day. So she knew his name.
Right.
That was about it. She didn't know brothers, sisters, mother, father. She knew his name.
Yeah.
And to be awakened into the big realm of the family that she has, it's awesome.
Yeah, and again, it's really wild that it shows that a lot of that is genetics as much as it is learned.
Right.
Because she didn't have that influence of her father being around throughout her entire childhood.
Right.
So yeah, it's really wild. And like I said, until you kind of take a step back and look at it, it's like it wasn't just my mom; it was all of her siblings, across the board. So
all of her siblings and their children. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, yeah.
sometimes you wonder if it's a blessing or a curse.
I think sometimes, most of the time, it's a blessing.
Yes.
But there have been times when you're just like, but I think you have that with everything.
Yeah, no doubt.
There's always good and bad. It's what you do with it, though.
Yeah.
Even the cursed parts.
Yeah.
It's, do you learn from it? Do you grow from it? What can I get out of this?
Right.
You know?
That's the thing. I think if we're always learning and we're always growing.
When we're younger, we tend to forget that.
Yeah.
It's always like, what am I going to get out of this? What am I doing this for? And then it changes.
Yeah.
At some point. I don't know that there's a particular age, but it changes. And it's like, wait, I don't want anything out of this.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're just about out of time, but any other little stories you want to share about our huge family before I get to our final question?
There could be a gazillion. We've talked about so many stories, and we have so many, and there's so many more. I want you to stretch this to the next generation a little bit and get some of their stories. I've told you how my two called your mom Cinderella because they couldn't say Loretta, and so she was always Cinderella to them. And there's just neat little stories like that generation can share too. So, because there's so many memories that we don't have because we lost so many people and we didn't do this soon enough.
Right.
I want to try and capture these for the next generations to come, so that when our kids want to know, who Uncle Danny was, and so that they can have that.
Yeah, and that was part of why, Sandy and I wanted to kind of document this because. It was one thing after my mom passed away to sit through and look at the albums and see stuff and, see pictures of, you guys in Galveston. And you're like, oh, I never even knew she went and visited with them. I mean, she went and, visited.
I think she saw everybody.
Nephew George, who none of us had even heard of for, most of our lives. So it was so important to her to keep everybody connected,
right?
For whatever reason, and I wish now that I would have asked her then why it was so important. But I don't know that it matters.
Yeah, I don't think it
why,
does. I don't know that she knew why.
Right.
I know, I go out of my way to make sure if somebody comes close enough to me that I can get to see them, I do it. 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. If you make it here, I'll get to you. And it's just, I don't know why, it's just important to me. Yeah. Maybe because we've lost people and you don't know if you're going to get that chance. Maybe just because, it's neat to connect. I love sharing the stories. I love that we have the memories that we have. And I write them down and, I journal so that I can share them. I have a book that I'm working on for both Jessica and Devin, just to share and keep those memories going. So, yeah, I think I don't think there's a why. I think it's just, maybe a pull, maybe a thirst for knowledge, just, I don't want to know why, but I want to know what, what did you do? What did you think? Where did you go? Who were you with? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and I oftentimes thought maybe that it was so important to her because at a young age, the original four, as we call them,
were separated
from that family unit, that she found it important to connect with everyone. And I've said this to many other people. I mean, my mom, one thing that she was big on is she never referred to any of her siblings as half brother, step brother,
none of them
sister.
None of them did.
This was my family.
I remember because I was confused because there were two Jims. There was a step Jim and a half Jim.
Right.
And I asked my dad, I'm like, I'm confused. Is there two of them? Is one, and he said to me, yes, I have two brothers named Jim. And I looked at him and it was like, okay, you just knew there was no point. It wasn't a question. But his response, and it wasn't negative or nasty or, no, I have two brothers named Jim.
Right.
To him, to them, it wasn't that way.
Yep. And I think my mom definitely made me become a better step-parent
because of that. Right.
And that it was intentional for her with me about
Right.
that, because when I first started dating Sandy and she had 3 children, I mean, my mother was very matter of fact.
These are not your stepchildren.
Right.
These are your children.
Right.
And you have to go into it with that mindset.
Yep. She said,
Because it does make a
It's a
difference.
package deal.
Right.
They're not optional.
Right.
And they're your kids. Period.
And especially
End of story.
because you had Sandy, you know, when you blend a family like that, it's very important that everyone belongs. You can't have, you know, well, this is mine and these are yours, and it doesn't work that way.
Right.
And yeah, your mom was very strong on that. They all were, yes, but there wasn't, yeah. And we're finding so many different branches of the family. Some that, you know, we're not even sure if they're really,
Right.
but they are. You know, it's like I said about, you know, they had his name. If he accepted them as his own children, that was enough for me.
Right.
So, yeah, there isn't.
Yeah.
We
So
are.
I always ask everybody one final question in my podcast, because it's, you know, The Journey of My Mother's Son, with the subtitle Many Little People in Many Little Places, which is derived from a song by Michael Franti, where the opening lyrics go on to say, when many little people in many little places do many little things and the whole world changes. So I always like to ask all of my guests, you know, what have some of the little things that you have done throughout your life to make the world a better place?
Oh, that's a tough one. To make the world a better place?
And then again, it doesn't have to be
Huge.
I think we look at things in a big perspective. So even if it's that little thing in that little place.
I try and keep the mindset, you know, my door is always open. If you ever need anything, if you ever want anything, if you ever just need a place to go, a place to stay, you know, I'm here. Growing up, there was always people knocking on our door, and you never knew when, where, how. So I always try and keep a welcoming mat out there, just so that people know they have a place to go if they need to, or even if they just, you know, want to hang out.
Yeah.
So I try and be there for other people, just because you never know.
Yeah.
You know, I've had nieces and nephews knocking on my door because they've run away from home, and you know, you gotta be there for others sometimes, and not be judgmental, not be critical, and just say, okay, hey, you know, of course you call who you're supposed to and let them know if everybody's okay. But yeah, so that's my little, try and be there for others.
Yeah.
Because they were all, you know, I knocked on their doors at times.
Yeah, and I think that's something else that's part of our DNA. I mean, I know when, you know, my mom left my father and drove down here to Florida, you know, we wound up on Aunt Sally's front door, you know, and the door was open.
Yep.
And it was stay as long as you need to until you get back on your feet. So I definitely think that's certainly another DNA trait that we've got.
I think so too.
So.
I think we all got some really good genes, you know. You know, there's good and there's bad in every family history.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, we lucked out because, you know, we're all doing okay.
Yep.
And we're all caring, loving, strong, successful, you know, yeah, we did okay.
Yep, I agree. So, hey, thanks a lot for joining me. Thanks that we got to spend some time together.
I'm so glad it all worked out.
Went to the zoo and just, you know,
found out
did
what
a
the
lot
berry's
of
named
stuff.
after.
Yeah,
And
yes, it's very cool. So,
and
folks,
it ain't over yet.
Yep, nope, not for a long time. So, folks out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at danclouser.com. Debbie, thanks again for joining me.
Glad to be here.